Now we're going to have a different topic again, and I'm delighted to be able to introduce two fellow Melburnians who are going to talk to us about the power of money and how it can be used to drive behavioural change, and also the power of building a coalition for action within a university or other contexts. So I'm really happy to have Will van de Paul from Market Forces and Dr. Hannah McCann from the Climate Justice Network, excuse me. Thank you very much, and over to you guys.
Thank you very much, Elsa, for having us, and everyone for tuning in. It's a great pleasure to be able to present today. I'm going to go first, but I will let Hannah introduce herself first, so you're not sitting there in the dark wondering exactly who else is on this presentation. So Hannah, please.
Thanks, Will. So I'm Hannah McCann, and I'm from the Climate Justice Network at the University of Melbourne, and this is a subcommittee of the NTEU branch at the university, of which I'm a committee member. So I'll talk more about that in a moment, but over to Will for now.
Thank you very much, Hannah. So I have a few slides that I'm going to speak to today, but really want to keep it fairly short and snappy in describing to you the power of money, I guess, element of this presentation, and who exactly Market Forces is and what we do. So I will share these slides with you now and introduce myself properly. Okay. So my name is Will van de Paul. I am the Asset Management Campaigner at Market Forces. Market Forces is a Melbourne-based but increasingly international focused environmental not-for-profit organisation. We are an affiliate project of Friends of the Earth Australia. And basically at Market Forces, we seek to shift finance and investment away from projects and companies that would damage our natural environment and shift that finance and investment towards sustainable opportunities. So the title of my presentation, part of the presentation today, is The Power of Money. But really what it's about is aligning our finances with our values. And when I say that, it's not just our personal finances and our personal values, but it's really about viewing this as a collective effort to shift finance and investment and direct it in a way that is sustainable at an institutional level. So while personal action is really important, I'm here to speak to you about how banding together to drive collective action to influence institutional change is what we're all about. So the way that Market Forces works to shift information is a really simple model, and one that can be applied in basically any situation where you have a person or a group of people who want to affect positive change on any issue. We obviously operate on the financial sector and its influence on climate change, but this model is applicable across the board. So what we do is we gather and share information. Market Forces is, as much as anything else, a research organisation. For example, we do the research to find out where exactly our banks and super funds and insurers are investing our money once it leaves our pocket and goes and sits in that institution. So we present that information to super fund members, bank customers, people looking for an insurance policy, etc., and allow people to use their, I guess, consumer power to decide which institutions they want to be involved with, but then also to band together with other members of that super fund or customers of that bank, for example, to use a collective action model to shift that institution to a more sustainable model. So that's really the three elements of our process towards shifting institutions. It's gathering and sharing information, building power with that group that can influence an institution, and then facilitating action to ensure that those that want to take action and push for positive change are able to do so in the most effective way possible. So an example of this, and one that really I think ties into the CANIE Summit generally, and definitely what Hannah is going to be speaking to as well, is our current campaign to shift UniSuper to ensure that its investment portfolio no longer includes fossil fuel companies. This is, I guess, a microcosm of our broader financial institutional campaigning that we do at Market Forces. So as an example of this model to shift institutions in action, I wanted to speak a little bit about the UniSuper Divest campaign. So UniSuper is the default pension fund for tertiary education sector workers in Australia. Many of you, I'm sure, are members or know of the fund. And UniSuper, we think and have had interactions with many members, basically guiding our action on this super fund, telling us that as the super fund that represents this body of, or this sector of the community, we want the fund to represent our values, and we don't want it investing in the companies and projects that are holding back the transition to a low carbon economy. So through that process, we've developed a campaign that is now obviously being run entirely online, but at one time earlier this year, it involved some actions on campuses. And basically just, it's all about gathering those members that want to take action and influence change, giving them the information and the tools that they need to be able to do that, and to do that effectively. And so I think that's an example of a sort of model that can be brought in to influence change at any institution. And so if there are climate issues that you are seeking to improve or get institutional support for, then this is the model that we use and have found really effective, and there's some examples of how that has been done and is continuing to operate at the moment. So, I'll leave this fairly short because I want to open it up to questions at the end that both Hannah and I can respond to. So I will finish up there. Please send through any questions and I'll hand over to Hannah.
So if you want to find us on Facebook, you can find us there. So I guess the point of this, how this connects to the forum that you've got going, is partly, you know, maybe your students want to get involved in campaigns like the one being run by Market Forces, or they want to get involved with things that staff are doing like you. We're encouraging you to kind of get involved in these things as educators that are interested in climate action. And we certainly work with the student unions as well. So it's really relevant, I think, to the last presentation that you just saw about how, you know, dealing with student climate anxiety is also something that, you know, necessitates student action, and I would say staff action as well is really important in that. So what's the deal with our group, the NTEU Climate Justice Network at the University of Melbourne? Basically, we started last year in 2019 out of this desire of a few NTEU members to do more about climate action on campus, but as workers, so bringing together the labour movement and the environment movement, which sometimes have been quite separate in activist circles. And so what we really started out asking as a group is, what does it mean for us as tertiary workers to take climate action? And what does it mean in this language that's kind of been around in the past year around a Green New Deal or a just transition away from dependence on the fossil fuels industry? What does that actually mean for tertiary sector workers? And so that's what we've really been kind of discussing in our group over the last year. And we've put together a number of kind of vision statements and things that you can read if you go to our Facebook page. And so what we've really come to is this idea that sustainability isn't enough. And a lot of our institutions, there's a lot of work, hard work that's been done, really important work around sustainability, you know, cutting down travel, obviously a huge concern for members of this group. But how green are our jobs in terms of the institution? And that's where something like Market Forces Uni Super campaign comes in, questions of divestment that are related to tertiary sector workers, but also in terms of our institutions, the universities. What is our relationship to fossil fuels that isn't just where we're putting our money as institutions, but where we're getting our money from? So what's funding our research? And there's a lot of concerning examples at all of our institutions of these very intense and close ties with the fossil fuels industry in terms of money directly that we get for research, but also different kind of relationships that are sometimes a bit informal, but you know, there was some news recently out of the University of Melbourne in Farrago, you can look it up, our student magazine, about earth sciences kind of having this special relationship with ExxonMobil and them coming to the university and kind of recruiting students early on to kind of work for Exxon. So these quite concerning relationships with the fossil fuels industry. And so that's why we want to go beyond just thinking about sustainability. It's about thinking about how green our jobs are. And so we've come up with 3 demands as a group. And the first one is a demand for green education. And this isn't just a demand on our institutions, this is a demand on the government. So, you know, this is about a fully funded higher education sector, which obviously has never been more important than right now as we're seeing all of this drama unfolding in the sector. But green jobs that don't need a reliance on industry funding, and particularly, you know, as one of the kind of, I guess, concerns that we have in light of COVID-19 is with all of these funding shortfalls, institutions might be looking to industry more than ever, and these existing relationships with the fossil fuels industry might intensify. And related to that, our second demand is about ending fossil fuel cooperation. So these issues of divestment, but also investment, and the relationships that are happening in these institutions, sometimes, you know, between graduate students kind of being targeted by these industries and so on. And lastly, climate justice leadership is our demand on our institution. So we want to be leaders in targeting climate change. We know that we're producing the next generation of people that are not only going to have to live with the effects of climate change, but respond to it and come up with new ideas and, you know, research to respond to that. And so we need to take responsibility for building this green future. And part of that is these other things around cutting the ties to the fossil fuels industry.
Thank you very much indeed, Hannah and Will, for that. I love the approach of looking at what's needed and then working backwards from there, rather than just looking at what's specifically our own narrow focus. So congratulations to both of you, and it's really important work, obviously. What I'd really like to ask you both is to put yourselves for a moment in the shoes of our audience. So you're an international education practitioner for the most part, you work in an international office, say, and you don't have control over the big institutional decisions around, you know, divestment or around which bank the institution banks with, or where you source your energy from. What could you do as an individual in that position to really try and make some change happen?
Yeah, so if I'll just go first and then Will can kind of answer as well. I think our approach has been to collectivize. So that's the first thing, is forming a group of people on campus who are active around these things, and then strategizing together about how we're going to kind of launch a campaign, what our tactics are. Last year, one of the things that we spent quite a lot of energy on was getting a demand happening to the Vice Chancellor to let everyone attend the climate strike without penalty. And we actually won that. So we got 900 people signed up to a petition that we wrote. And that couldn't have happened just by any of us acting kind of individually and kind of putting ourselves out there to be kind of targeted. But when you're a group and you've got the kind of union support as well, and you've got these kind of big email networks that, you know, the union has access to, you can kind of get the ball rolling from there. I don't know, Will, did you want to add anything about campaigning?
Just absolutely agree that while you may feel it is a lone person acting at first, there's always others that you can join up with. And to build that sort of power is all about, you know, informing others within your close circle, so within your same office, having those discussions and building strength from within, taking that to, you know, maybe you can get a policy position or a statement or something from your entire office that is, you know, championed by those right at the top. And I think recognising that, you know, international offices and the international outposts of education institutions are actually really powerful bodies within and quite viewed as really important to institutions. So recognising that power that can come from a position that builds from yourself to those nearest to you and then spreads across the institution, whether it's other, you know, international offices or other outposts or other groups within the organisation that can build that broad level of support that can influence change.
Wonderful. Sounds like we need a climate action network for international education.
That sounds good. And on that note, if anyone wants us, Will or I, or both of us, to kind of speak at a group that you do form in your institution, we're very happy to do that. So just find us and contact us.
Thank you. That's really great. And I appreciate your time so much. And it's wonderful to have you. I'm sorry we don't have time for any more questions, I'm afraid. But everyone's got your contact details. So thanks so much. And can I just say as well to anyone who's with UniSuper who haven't yet switched to their sustainable and green options, you really should. Not only is it the right thing to do, but it's actually over the last several years been by far the most lucrative option for your pocket as well. I can testify to that. So thank you very much, Hannah and Will, for your time.